Thank you very much, Ryan, for the introduction again, and thanks for stepping up to the plate here with the extra panels that you're handling in Riyadh because of my absence from being on the ground. And I'm particularly interested in this panel itself because the emerging province for minerals, as the emerging markets editor for CNN for so long, I always was interested in to see how countries make declarations on certain sectors and then deliver on the promise. In some cases, they do not. But if you look at the history of the Gulf states in particular on the Arabian Peninsula, the oil and gas infrastructure and that dominance in the marketplace, trade hubs, of course, airline hubs, tourism hubs, cultural hubs, financial hubs. Basically, every pledge that's been made has been delivered upon. And I know mining is a big ask here because it requires so much infrastructure and so much investment and longer timelines, of course. But again, the track record is a proven one, particularly in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We have a fantastic panel of four, which gives us ample time in 40 minutes to really delve into the subject of developing this province. Jeffrey Dawes is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Mining for Komatsu, normally based in the United States. He's joining us from Santiago, Chile, where he has big operations. Good to see you. Nadhmi Nasr is the Chief Executive Officer of NEOM. He was planning to be in Riyadh, but appointments in NEOM and the development of that hub in the northwest of the kingdom kept him there. He's joining us virtually. It's great to see you and look forward to talking. Hirofumi Katase is Executive Vice Chairman and Director General Science and Technology for iPulse Inc. He's in Riyadh. And Darryn Quayle is the Vice President of Resources for Worley. Gentlemen, it's great to have you. I'm going to ask you to keep your interventions to 2 minutes or less because we have a lot of territory to cover. And first off, Jeffrey, you gave us so many interesting topics to get into, but one is that overarching theme that's been coming up here at this forum over the last 48 hours, and that is infrastructure and demand. Let's cover the demand because of electrification right now and the resources. You're involved in the infrastructure, the heavy equipment, and the architecture to keep mining operations moving. What are the demand projections, and what does that mean for the Komatsu business where you're operating in Latin America and other parts of the world?
Yeah, thanks, John, and welcome everyone. There's a huge move towards making mining sustainable. It's a common saying in our industry, if it's not grown, it's mined. So mining is extremely important to provide the metals and minerals that the world needs to keep moving forward. But we have to do it in a sustainable manner. What we've seen in the last few years is a very strong push towards speeding up that process of sustainability. So we're talking about automation, electrification, and digital transformation. The infrastructure required for that is enormous. We can build a all-electric truck. It's technically possible. We're working on it now. We're a couple of years out probably before it's commercially available. But just a simple thought is one truck uses about a megawatt of power. So if you take that diesel engine out and you put some batteries in there, that mine that's running 70 trucks will need an extra 70 megawatts of green power. Otherwise, you defeat the purpose of taking the diesel engine out. So that investment in infrastructure required to support sustainable mining is enormous.
Very good. In fact, people are probably wondering on this panel, why do we have the Chief Executive Officer of NEOM joining us right now? But it is developing very quickly on a number of different sectors, but one of them is technology. So, Mr. Nasr, do you want to start there on the role of building this province from the kingdom? And how do you see the mandate from the Crown Prince, His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Salman, to make that delivered for the kingdom? Make it happen.
Thank you, and I wish I was in Riyadh to be close to the discussion, but technology is helping us to connect. I would maybe follow up from Jeffrey's notes. We have an extra challenge, if not extra challenges in NEOM. We're branding and truly telling the world NEOM is not just a new region, but a new region that's going to be a leading in making sure that we are in harmony with nature. A region that's going to be totally clean when it comes to energy. It will be the first region on Earth that will be fully electrified and energized by renewable energy, solar, wind, and green hydrogen. With all of this, when we are to kick off the discussion that NEOM is going to be also into the mining business, we need to be very careful, but very clear and transparent. We are in the mining business because we believe we and other partners can do this business and can change the impression on this business as not clean. We are digging into technology and innovation and the call for how can we bring on board a green full chain mining from the mining field all the way to export and in between the industry. So we are taking this challenge serious, and we believe this is what we will be able to do collectively with the industry worldwide to convince people that we can be sustainable yet in the mining business, because that impression about the mining business as not a good thing to do is totally not real and not correct. So we willing to take that lead to convey that message by showcasing the mining business in NEOM.
Yeah, I would not make the natural connection between NEOM and the mining business, but this cluster that you're setting up makes perfect sense. And I'll circle back with some more questions along those lines. Mr. Katase, I'd like to talk to you about this outlook from Goldman Sachs saying that basically these materials that we need, these rare earth materials, are really the new oil of the future or gold of the future, right? In terms of the wealth creation. Copper, the new oil, is another phrase that we've seen out in the marketplace today. But there are concerns. Again, this is what's emerged in this call to action at the forum, that we cannot meet the demand that's coming right now for these strategic minerals. How do you see it in terms of how it fits into building the province in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, through the copper, but not only copper, nickel, cobalt, lithium, and some other metals are critical for the sustainability of the against the global warming, decarbonization effort. But unfortunately, in the traditional major producing countries, there are less and less new discoveries of the ore bodies, and also the grade is decreasing. There is also a water problem, for example, in Latin America. And this is also making the mining itself more and more carbon intensive. So going backward for the world decarbonization effort. And if we think that the whole supply chain, the decarbonization of the mining itself is critical. So that's why I think that this kingdom and the southern region is crucial. This is a highly underexplored area, but at the same time, even more higher prospective area. And also, if we think of the applying the new technologies, it's better to start the application from scratch, from the development of the mines. And so that's also why this region, especially the kingdom, will be very, very important for the decarbonization of the whole world.
Great. Let me follow up quickly with you, Mr. Katase, and that is there the ability from your standpoint, because the kingdom's coming late into the marketplace, that actually has an advantage here because of the introduction of AI technologies, for example, and a much more efficient technology to leapfrog into the market at a much faster pace? What's your view?
Well, I think we need to innovate all through the value chain of the mining, from exploration, extraction, processing, and to refinery. Not just the extraction. Because first we need to find the ore bodies. But with the current technologies, we cannot see very deep, maybe 400 meters. And also, it takes a lot of time, even to conduct electromagnetic surveys. So first, we need to come up with a very disruptive technology to expedite this exploration and see even deeper, where we cannot see. But our effort needs to go beyond the simple mining supply chain. For example, the water. Water is essential for mining. Without water, even if we find huge ore bodies, it's nothing. In order to process like one ton of the rock, we need 2 cubic feet of water. So we need to find water. And in this region, I understand that the water is now being mainly supplied from a desalination from the oceans, but the salt is getting higher and higher in the Arabic Gulf or in the Red Sea. So we need to find water. And on energy, as Jeff said, we need to come up with the renewable energy supply to move electrified machines, drilling machine trucks. But this kingdom has a huge endowment, for example, in solar power. So that's perspective. But at the same time, we need to build huge batteries to supply the energy into the mining process. And this also requires disruptive innovation. So we need disruption in the whole mining technology supply chain, but also outside of this, including batteries and water, for example.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to bring it up with Darryn Quayle about the innovation that's needed in the sector today. And Darryn, one of the things you're most passionate about is getting the renewable energy sources and that solar power that's being generated within the kingdom right now into the supply chain. How confident that we can ramp up on the battery storage and have these breakthrough technologies really impact this business at the front end of the cycle in the kingdom?
So that's a great question, John. Worley are a very large engineering construction company, and we're currently building most of the battery raw material capability in Europe. And one of the things that we constantly come up against, John, is the fact that the energy that's going into the cathode and the anode that we produce is quite dirty and it's very expensive. It's quite dirty in the carbon intensity, and there's not much point heating the graphite to the temperature of the sun for 2 weeks to make an anode if it's coal-fired power that's being used. It sort of defeats the point of that. And I know Jeff shares my view on that. The thing about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is it has low-cost, vast amounts of low-carbon energy. And my vision for this, for what it's worth, is I believe that the kingdom can become the greenest, most assured supply chain of what we call battery active materials on the planet. I think that it becomes the natural hub for places like Canada, Africa, Australia, to process the carbon intensity type materials and then supply them to Europe and beyond. I don't think any country on the planet has the ability to produce renewable energy like this country that I'm sitting in today.
Oh, very interesting. Do you want to get into quickly your concerns about the meeting the demand around the world as well? Mr. Katase talked about it. Jeffrey touched upon it, but I think it's worth getting your thoughts before we bring in the other subject matter. I followed the same research you had read and cited to me in your emails about the IEA projections of 5, 6, 7-fold demand by 2050. depending on the strategic deposits.
Yeah, that's a great, yeah. John, last year we produced about 66,000 tonnes of cathode in 2020. Actually, at the end of 2020, it's about 66,000, 70,000 tonnes. Our projections show about 2025, we're going to need 400,000 tonnes of cathode just in Europe, an increase of 6 times. And we're building these plants, and we can tell you that unless we do something differently, it's probably not going to happen on schedule. And that's a big issue when you're building a gigafactory, expecting to have raw material supply to it, and you've just invested $1.5 billion. One of the capacities that the country that I'm sitting in today has is scale. It is very used to vast amounts of oil and gas and the engineering that goes behind that. So what we're looking at is working with the kingdom to design process flow sheets based on an oil and gas type mentality. There's 2 things about that. One is you can compress vast process flow sheets into a matchbox. This is a core skill. And secondly, the process engineering is quite similar in many respects. So what you can do is scale and copy and paste and build capacity very, very quickly. And then, of course, referring to my first answer, you can then plug that into renewable energy, which gives you that, again, the greenest, most assured supply chain of battery active materials on the planet. It helps. This is an energy transition. As a speaker yesterday, Mark talked about, he said, this isn't a start and stop. This is a transition. And Worley needs to be involved in that because 60% of our business is oil and gas in the country here. And we need to move and pivot into this space. So we're very keen to develop new capacities in this region.
Okay, you know, I'm a communications professional by trade, obviously, as a journalist for so long. And if I come from the outside looking in and I say to the industry, this is an incredible conversation we're having today. But if you went outside this arena and said, what's the mining industry doing? And if you looked at the Gen Zers or the millennials and say, you know, go into mining because they're going to have this automation and bring in technology and solve the world's problems, people would say you're nuts. So we have this gap in perception. And how important is it when building the province now that we get ahead of this communications curve? Jeffrey, I think you know it's a sensitive issue no matter where you are, in Chile or the United States or anywhere else. Does the industry need to work on that, in your view, in terms of bringing these building blocks together?
No, absolutely. Mining industry in general tends to keep a low profile, which actually works against us. We should probably blow our own trumpet a little bit more about what we are doing in terms of sustainability and responsible mining. Just as an example, we have about 500 autonomous trucks running around the world, and so does our competition, Caterpillar. So there's about 1,000 out of a total number of 15,000 large-scale mining trucks. So about 5, 6, 7% of all the mining trucks in the world are running autonomously right now. That's high technology. That's cutting edge. There's nowhere else in the world where 5 or 6 or 7% of the fleet vehicles are running autonomously. So the mining industry is high tech. It is at the cutting edge of technology. It's just that most people don't realize that. So attracting young people into this industry, we have to make it look interesting, make it look cool, make it look sexy, and it is. It's just that we've done a lousy job at communicating that, and also have the current generation actively participate in this transition towards sustainable mining. Because without mining, we're all going to freeze in the dark. So it's an absolute necessity, and it's an absolute necessity that has to be done sustainably.
Okay, very good. I'm glad you share that candor. Let's bring in the Chief Executive Officer of NEOM, which is pledged to be a zero carbon city. So I would imagine in this narrative that I'm talking about here, Mr. Nasr, that you can control the narrative, but actually be part of the solution with these technologies. So the cluster that you're building up, doesn't it provide that kind of leverage for the kingdom to embark on this journey in mining?
I agree with you fully, John and Tom, and that's the advantage we want to take advantage of, really, in NEOM. Speaking on behalf of the kingdom, we're starting with no legacy. However, we're starting with ambitious to bring technology and innovation on the picture, and everything we do here is driven by that fact. When we come to mining, I agree with your remarks earlier on the perception of mining. No matter what we do at this stage, that mining perception is not good yet enough. I mean, people, when they talk about mining, they remember the movies of Hollywood about, stories about what happened down there. It was described as a very, very dark industry of the mid-18s. The world has moved around, has come a long way. So what in NEOM, we have that advantage of starting from no legacy, where we have the advantage of 3 or 4 of our key sectors in NEOM are about research, technology, IAs, renewable energy. And we, among ourselves and our board, say we cannot miss this opportunity to show the world, and not only showcase what NEOM is doing, but showcase the mining industry together with the Jeff of the world and everybody's of the world. How can the mining collectively, NEOM and others, show that mining is not only a safe industry, but it can be leading the renewable or the clean thing. So we're focusing on technology. Tech and digital is our leading sector in NEOM. And I have to say, within over the last 12 months, our tech and digital sector here has surprised us with how tech and digital can have a huge role in transforming the mining industry. I never thought 2 years ago that it will have this much impact. So it's very promising. I think working together on how we can use the tech and digital, the internet of technology and all of that, I am very, very optimistic. In no time, in a few years to come, the perception will change. And that's what we are focusing on in NEOM. We are really challenging ourselves. Before we announce that we are in the mining business, we want to make sure that we can answer the concerns and the questions. If we, God forbidden, we fail to do that, then we have to try again. We will not go to the market without showing the world that the mining industry is ready to be a clean industry.
Good. You're confident, and I mean, if I can ask a follow-up question, Mr. Nasr, that the infrastructure around this, if I look at the infrastructure at Saudi Aramco or the infrastructure around SABIC, it's not a stretch to say this combination of having that tech hub in NEOM and having the mining operations throughout the country can be delivered. I was saying to Jeffrey in the green room before we went on stage here, that if you look at the history of the kingdom or any of the Gulf states, when they declare there's a sector that can be harvested, that they deliver on the promise. Is there any doubts in your mind that this can come to fruition at a short time frame, if you will?
Well, I will start by saying I am an Aramco boy. I am an oil engineer for 35 years in that oil industry, and 35 years showed me the evolution of the oil and gas industry to something that me as a Saudi citizen and oil person, I'm so proud of that evolution. I carry the same confidence, if not extra, with the mining industry. Yes, I am confident because of what I know we're doing every day and what we are going to bring a positive news in years to come, hopefully not too many years, that this industry will announce collectively that this is a clean industry and very critical. So yes, to answer your note or observation, I'm very confident.
Okay, very good. I thought you were an Aramco man. I could tell by the DNA of the conversation we're having here. Now, if I combine the notes that were given to me before, we shared a lot of emails with this panel, so I appreciate the feedback. The common thread was infrastructure for the 21st century, right? So, Mr. Katase, I'd like to bring you in on that, and I'd like to have the panel think about this because I want each one of you to answer it. What is the 21st century architecture of infrastructure in this province in Saudi Arabia, developing it in the Middle East and North Africa, which you would say is mission critical? Mr. Katase, why don't you jump in, and then Darryn, you pick up right after. Thanks.
Yeah, of course, when we think about the infrastructure for mining, we think about railway, ports, road. And they're all critical. And the government should play a major role in this. But at the same time, when we think of the infrastructure, as I said, water, battery, electricity are all important, renewable electricity. And in this area also, I think the role of government is very important because when you are trying to promote totally different disruptive technologies, and I think this is critical for the future of the mine. We should think that the clever government is better fitted than the private sector to introduce and promote new technologies. And I have met a lot of senior officials, people in the government in the kingdom, and I'm very much convinced that they are the first-class excellent officials. And I think if the Saudi government plays such a proactive role in deploying innovative infrastructure in all sectors, taking the lead through the government-owned entities such as NEOM, for example. I think the kingdom could actually be the global leader of the future mining.
Wow, that's quite a statement in itself. Darryn, can I add one other layer to the conversation here? Would you consider the mining code, I know this is a bit of a stretch, but I think it's apropos, the mining code as part of the important infrastructure, say the soft infrastructure that's needed, and how would you rate 21st century infrastructure, the building blocks that are necessary for this province?
John, there's actually another level above that one, which is probably even more important. So may I answer it in two ways. One is, the biggest resource we need to invest in is the people that are going to run these places. Witwatersrand, the West Australian School of Mines, Colorado School of Mines are suffering. They have no people interested in the mining, engineering, and mineral processing courses. So we're struggling to find resources in order to even design and run these mines and mineral processing operations globally. It doesn't matter if you're Australian or Canada or whatever, it doesn't matter. You just physically can't find the people. And part of that is some of the conversation we've had before. I was heavily involved in the COP26 program in my previous role as the British government's mining engineer. And it was quite obvious, I did that for 2 years, focusing on COP26, and it was quite obvious that mining wasn't going to be part of a climate change conversation. And we need to really address that in the next COP27. The second thing was, mining was described as the bad guy in the movie. Right, and we've got to change that, and that underpins everything that we're talking about today from infrastructure, because that will then give us the people and the young people and the future leaders to come and run these facilities and design mines that have all the the IT and the AI and the autonomous systems. But in terms of the mining code, you know, one of the things that mining needs to do is improve, and that needs the thump of investors behind it. You've seen groups like the Principles for Responsible Investment, Adam Matthews and the Church of England in particular, leading the push for a new global tailing standard, for example, and the move to no use of water. Those sort of technologies, these new standards where the standards, the best practice is the minimum standard. That's where the investors want to go, and these investors own the mining companies. So the codes that we're actually doing need to be adjusted for new technologies that maintain a minimum environmental impact on this. That's really crucial. Mining has an opportunity here to change the narrative of the bad guy to the good guy. And I think we've got one shot at the energy transition. If we fail on this time, I think we'll be the bad guy forever.
Yeah, indeed, not just for this sector, but you have to say, going back to the Rio Agreement in the early 1990s, right, 92, what have we accomplished globally? We now have had this wake-up call, and we're chasing the rabbit around the track, if you will. Jeffrey, I want to have you address infrastructure, and then I'm going to have the panel. This is such a great group of people to talk to. The influence of environmental social governance on this process as well, because you need to raise money for projects, correct? But Jeffrey, give us your insights as a heavy equipment manufacturer and a builder of operator for mining facilities around the world. What is 21st century infrastructure, and how does this apply in the roadmap for the kingdom?
I think Katase-san and Darryn, you know, both highlighted the obvious need for green power and clean water. That's not diverting water from, you know, traditional farming use, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, desalination plants, which goes back to power again, because you need power to make, fresh water from salt water. But the other thing is the digital transformation. I think Darryn touched on it quite lightly, and we've seen it a lot during, you know, these last COVID years. The fact that we can't travel has put a lot of pressure on, you know, virtual participation. Here we are right now participating virtually from all over the world. But what we've found is that the whole process of digital transformation, where we're monitoring our machines that are working around the world, real time, 24/7, and the fact that we can't ship our technicians out there to do the diagnosis on the machine when it goes down, has forced us to develop the technology really quickly to be able to do remote diagnosis. And what that's meant is in an area like the kingdom, who's moving into this industry, although we do have to bring some of those professionals in there to start it going, we can tap into the world's knowledge, the world's database of know-how on these professionals using the latest virtual technology, and that's a huge advantage as well. So, you know, power, water, yes. High-speed internet, digital transformation is extremely important, so we can import that know-how and speed the kingdom up that learning curve much, much faster than you know, traditional mining centers. Okay,
I wanted to bring in the CEO of NEOM again, Mr. Al-Nasr. And I'm glad you listed this as one of the things you wanted to address, because it was on the forefront of my mind. Green hydrogen. We, in the energy sector, have followed this development. It was kind of a couple of head fakes, as we'd say in the American vernacular of football. You'd think it's going to happen, and then it didn't happen. And now there's this big push to make it green hydrogen in a very aggressive way. What is NEOM's role there? And then I'm going to bring up ESG with Mr. Katase and Darryn.
Well, what's happening in NEOM when it comes to green hydrogen, we are constructing and building it as we speak. So we are ahead of the game. We don't say much about them because we like to be seen as we are walking the talk rather than branding. The three companies that are making the first joint venture, namely Air Products and Aquapower and NEOM, are working together day and night. We have the teams on the field. We are moving mountains to build the hydrogen plant as we speak. We are very committed to have an opening of it by 2025. And that's only phase 1. So there is phase 2 and there is phase 3. We believe in the value of the green hydrogen in the mix of the renewable energy. So that's one for sure. We are also building next to the green hydrogen site an innovation center and the research center. These two centers are there to dig deep into how can this innovation move the green hydrogen for the next decades. We know this is not going to stay as is if we don't study it well, if we don't improve on it. We see the world demand on green hydrogen is going to increase, and the opportunity to maximize the production of green hydrogen is the world call and not only NEOM. So that we are doing. To me, back to the question that was highlighted before my session here is the infrastructure. I strongly believe the number one, if not the top infrastructure part of the equation is talents. I see the mining industry is driven by the 50s and the 60s and maybe before. Those people who were working on mining at the time and now are great people, brave. Many of them have maybe lost their life to get this industry go. But if we were to move to the next era of mining, talents. We have to bring these young people who see mining as a great future to go for and change that perception. If we don't do that, we can build all the infrastructure we can dream of, but we will not be able to attract the best talents. It is time, and I'm afraid my friend, the CEO of Aramco, may not like this. I mean, it's time for the mining to compete with the oil industry. And the oil industry has made a huge move in preparing the next generation. We need to do the same. And as a result, in NEOM, part of the projects we are doing today is we are creating a university and universities, not only one. And part of these universities is technical research and innovation in new industry, specifically mining. And we're not doing it for NEOM only, we're doing it to attract the best students in the world to come and be prepared for the future of research and innovation for the future mining.
Excellent. I love the way you said that as well, because there is this, again, the gap between the millennials and the Gen Z and then what the industry needs today and then the demand for the resources that we're talking about. Mr. Katase and Darryn, I'd love you to finish our session. We only have 4 minutes, so it's 2 minutes to each of you on ESG and the influence, because of it's such a driver. I'm sitting in the city of London, or if you look at Wall Street, as Jeffrey knows, he's based in the United States. European Union's the same way. There's so much pressure from pension funds and the university endowments not to invest in hydrocarbons, not to invest in mining. Is that going to forestall this effort that we're talking about here in this roundtable today to innovate to the level and green up the sector at the pace we're looking for as this call to action?
First, the mining will be the most critical factor if we pursue the ESG, especially decarbonization of the world. So we should never forget that. And secondly, the mining in the 19th century, for example, was the driver of the innovation as a whole. In order to mine, they needed to develop machinery technologies, chemical technologies. So in 19th century, all the modern industries came out of the necessity of the mining. And I think now this sort of theme is coming back. We need mining for the global, to fight against the global warming. The mining necessitates innovations to become by itself sustainable and also supply sufficient amount of the metals for the whole sustainability of the globe. We should think that way, that this is a chance that the mining itself will sort of renovate the whole industries, become the leader or driver of the whole innovations, such as water, batteries, for example, AIs. And these innovations will also contribute to the whole global economic growth or innovation.
Great, thank you very much. Darryn, you have the last word on this panel. You need capital to make it happen, right? So you want to be able to reach into the capital markets and not be branded as an industry you don't want to touch, right? So this is very important, the ESG principles and the code, and that being articulated by the industry, I would imagine.
This is critical, John, to an effective energy transition. I have the benefit of living in London and working with some of the world's largest pension funds who actually own significant parts of the world's largest mining companies. And their view is that, you know, everyone needs mining. I mean, I think that's shared by everyone in this room today and the panel. Secondly, mining can be a force for good. And they want to be involved in the journey. And unfortunately, following the Brumadinho disaster in 25th of January 2019, a lot of companies and the pension funds were very concerned by that and have formed various groups, such as the Investor Mining and Tailing Safety Initiative and the Principles for Responsible Investment and Climate Action 100+. And they're offering a very supportive role in investing in mining, John. They want to be involved in the process, but they want the mining industry to transform rapidly. So they're part of the conversation with a number of the mining companies and supply chains as we speak, and are happy to invest, but with a code, with standards that are much higher than the mining industry is used to generally. So they're picking and choosing and supporting the right people. But the money is there, John, absolutely. They can see it. They can see that the fact that we need 100% more nickel or 500% more cobalt, graphite and lithium. But it's going to come with a couple of hooks, and that's lifting the standards, because the unintended consequence of this will be vast amounts of environmental damage as we race to zero. They don't want that. They want us to transform and reduce our impact on the environment.
Good. I think that's a great place for us to finish. Just to manage expectations here, I want to thank our panels, and then I'm going to come back in and introduce our next speaker. So let's give a nice round of applause. Jeffrey Dawes joining us from Chile, Mr. Nadhmi Al-Nasr, the Chief Executive Officer of NEOM, joining us from NEOM. It's good to see you, and thanks for that. And our two participants, Hirofumi Katase joining us from iPulse, and Darryn Quayle from Worley on the ground in Riyadh, and thanks for playing along. A nice round of applause to them again, please. Thank you.